Welcome to Art Talk, the place where we agree to disagree, if we disagree at all. Today, my guest comes from Vienna, Austria, Dr. David Bullius. Our topic is world view. Hello, David. How are you?
Hello, René. I'm fine, and you?
I'm very fine. It's a little awkward to speak to you in English, but we've done so on a number of occasions in our international conferences where we have been together in the past. But normally we speak German, of course.
Yes, we do. And actually, it was a bit a challenge to do it in English. But anyway, we'll get through it.
We will get through it, and which is a good introduction just now to speak about our topic. We started actually with the German expression Weltbild. Then we had a bit of a discussion how we would translate this into English. How happy are you with worldview?
Well, I think worldview is a quite good approach to the German expression, and it will probably come out within our conversation today what we really mean. So let's judge this question at the end of the conversation. I think we'll get a better estimation of how well that's up to the point.
Very good. I would like to say a few words about David, who he is. In his biography, it says that he has studied for 6 years, that he has studied in Vienna technical physics at the university and then has done research in climate. And he's actually worked in Switzerland. At the time, he was particularly fascinated with the development of glaciers. And this is actually when we got to know each other, because obviously being a scientifically orientated personality, he did not find all the answers his holistic being was looking for. And I guess that's the reason why he ended up in Reiki. That's how we met. David became a colleague of ours. In fact, my wife and I trained him to be a Reiki teacher. And he and I have run a number of things together, projects, and we also started once an enterprise with high-flying ideas, utopic ideas, called Reiki International Organization, RIO. And that didn't quite work out. We closed it after a few years. But the ideologies behind it maybe are still pulsating because of the topic we are talking about today. David, I introduced you now in very general words. Would you like to add something?
You did that pretty well, I think. It was chemistry, not physics, actually, my original university career. And I then went into the climate research. And as you said, actually, my aim when I went to university was really natural sciences, to be able to understand things better in a way. And actually, you summarized it quite well. So one of the insights from the natural sciences was that it could not really give all the answers I had in my life. And this is actually when Reiki came up and opened, let's say, a second path. So next to the sciences, this path that is more oriented into spirituality, into healing, into emotions, and all the irrational stuff.
Yes, and in fact, I hope this is appropriate to say, you have been very deeply researching also in shamanism, haven't you?
Oh, yes. This was in a later stage. To give this in a chronological view, first were the natural sciences. They took me over to Reiki at some point. And in the last years, I've very deeply began also in the study of shamanism. And this in a point of view also is in this second path. So this is more on spiritual questions, why we are here, what's there next to the material world, what do we see, and what can we perceive in the immaterial world.
Great. And, you know, in my art talks, I'm speaking so often to men, thanks God also to women. But when I speak to men, I always feel, oh, I hope I can add a female touch somewhere. And recently I spoke to a man, and I brought in young students from Africa and from the Middle East in little video clips. And of course, when talking about David's biography, it should be mentioned that he has 3 children, and obviously his wife. And I'd like to introduce Marie-Louise, your wife, because she is actually the source of this conversation. You and I often have high-flying discussions about practical things, spirituality, political, environmental issues. And of course, occasionally she hears what we are discussing, and she suggested that we get to talk with each other. And I made a little video with her. I'd like to show to our viewers. Please be patient. It's in German for now. It will be translated into English if and when this art talk is being broadcast. Here comes Marie-Louise. Wir haben gerade geredet über die Möglichkeit, dass David und ich einen Art Talk haben, und du hast etwas von einem Schutzraum, Schutz, und ich habe es nicht verstanden. Erklär mir, was du gemeint hast damit, bitte.
Die Art und Weise, wie ihr zwei sprecht, lässt mich einfach spüren, dass man, so wie ihr das Gespräch aufbaut, hier sagen kann, was man sich denkt, ohne dass jemand zum Beispiel reinfährt und dir etwas deine Meinung verdrehen möchte oder gegen dich verwendet. Es ist einfach deine Meinung, die herrscht hier, die wird gehört, dann setzt jemand vielleicht einen Impuls mit, dann darf sich diese Meinung auch ein bisschen ein Stück weit verändern, und das ist gut so. Es ist eigentlich freudvoll, bei so etwas teilzuhaben, weil man auch lernt zu sagen, oder selber die Bestärkung gehört, sag doch, was du dir denkst, weil es gibt Menschen, die das auch annehmen und okay finden. Und ich glaube, dass das ein essentieller Teil dessen war, was mir bei euch gefallen hat. So, es war eigentlich eine Ermutigung, selbst auch Meinung zu bekennen. Vielleicht, oder nicht nur Meinung zu bekennen, auch vielleicht mal zugeben mit, du, dazu habe ich überhaupt keine Ahnung, was denkst du und gefällt mir. Und dann setzt sich wieder was Neues dazu. Eigentlich ist es eine Form von Befruchtung.
Gegenseitige Befruchtung.
Ja, klar.
Gut, danke,
Zuhörerin.
Danke, Marie-Louise. Und ich ende. This is quite a nice little video, I thought. How do you feel about it, David?
Yes, the video is very nice indeed. And it's actually good you have brought her in here as well. Yes, thank you, René. So it's interesting also the point she states, because the background of this was that you and I, René, had several discussions, which I did in my office normally, and so she could hear everything. And that's actually where at some point she said, well, but that sounds pretty interesting, so should probably be interesting to more people than just to myself.
You know, we're talking about a worldview. So to me, the word or the expression worldview entails how I perceive the world and how I perceive myself in relationship with the world, with the universe. And that has a lot to do with personal biography, with personal belief systems, and so on. And, you know, one of the worldviews maybe we should address first, and it has touched me when your wife spoke, because she said, I'm hearing 2 men talk to each other, often disagreeing, but they do so respectfully in an environment of mutual respect and protection. So let's talk a little bit about, if that's okay, about the worldview of particularly of you, David, about masculinity and how we men deal with each other, because it's not self-understood. And you and I we've had our rows, we've had our confrontations. We had to find a way where we got to the place where we are today, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're talking about worldview, and I kind of pointed it out in the beginning already. So I came from this very materialistic and rational way of seeing things, and I would in a way call this a worldview number one. And this is actually where a lot of the society somehow is a little limited in thinking that this is the only way of seeing things. And this is actually what is taught in the sciences, but it's also very present in the economics and in our educational system. And later on, I somehow crossed the bridge to get to another worldview, which is more on this very immaterialistic point of view. So things we do not really see or are able to touch, or be things that are very objective and that you can prove by experiment. So none of this is true in the second worldview. We're talking of very subjective perception, subjective things, impressions you have. You're never going to prove to anyone how your perception is. And yet, after this course of many years, what has turned out that these two ways of seeing things are not in contradiction to each other, as I thought in the beginning. And this had actually torn me apart when I was so much stuck in worldview number one, which only the meta counts, only what you can prove is important. And then I saw things like, but in this irrational world,
but
it's not about proving anything. Yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I'm not sure. I feel that you've addressed quite what I tried to say. This world number one view, and we can stick with that, has a very calculated, it has a very mind-orientated, control-oriented, a very patriarchal yang aspect about it. And I found my biography includes exactly that, particularly in the world of business, of the economy. And it has a lot to do with dominance, with achieving, with success, and always defined over being better than the other person, having more money, having a bigger house, having a faster car, and so on. I find that speaking to another man, like we're doing now, there is always this element somewhere looming in the background, or maybe it has loomed in the past time. How much are we trying to outdo each other? How are we trying to make a bigger picture, this competitive element? And I think that Marie-Louise suggested that our talk because, and I'm sure she hasn't thought greatly about it, this is my personal speculation, and I hope that she sensed that you and I got to a point where we could leave that behind, this competitiveness. You know what I mean?
I think I do. Yes, competition is really one of these key elements in this materialistic worldview, to be better, to become greater, to make advances, to do technological advances. And that's all fine, but it should not be the aspect to be more important than the other one. And that's actually probably a mistake that our society is a little bit captured in, that we're thinking that this materialistic and competitive approach is superior to the other approach that is more oriented toward the emotions, towards your feelings, and towards subjective effects. Yeah. Absolutely, I agree with that. And it's probably one of the big challenges for us as a society as a whole, to bring balance between these two extremes and to show that there is no contradictions between these views and approaches towards life. And of course, then this materialistic is also very much linked to capitalism and this economic system that's oriented towards exploitation. And I think we've pretty much also seen that this system has to come to an end somewhere, because in a finite world, we cannot have infinite growth. It just not works. It's simple mathematics. And the funny thing about this argument, that this comes from the rational world. This is worldview one argument. It's impossible. And by knowing that our economic system does not have a future by itself, if it's oriented only on material growth, it's very obvious that it has to be replaced by something else at some point in time, whether we are working and contributing to this change or whether the changes just will come by itself.
Yeah, it's something important, I find, and I'd like to underline it. If I understood you correctly, David, that you said it's not that the two worldviews have to contradict to each other. We have to find a respectful way to a synergy between the two of them. It's like a dance, like a cosmic dance, that both partners have their own value in themselves. And it's interesting because recently we released a conversation called Interplay, and it deals exactly with that dance between the rational mind, the controlling effect, and the other side. And in the case of the person of Ben Haggart I spoke to, he is also an artist, and it turned out that he has a very artistic side where he's living out a lot of that world view number two, to make it simple for our conversation. But David, that dance, tell me spontaneously, your wife or the women in your life, how important a role or what role have they played for you to get to a point where you feel more and more comfortable in this dance of the left and the right, the yin and the yang, the subtle and the not subtle manifestation of our existence?
That's a good question, actually. So I'm very grateful that I get this support of my wife in this development, in making steps every time. And I cannot really say whether women in general have had so much effective influence on my personal process in balancing these two worldviews. But what I can say is it has a lot of influence the way I can treat women and better understand them, let's say this, because this materialistic and man-oriented approach of seeing things, it tends to make relation more difficult. And as I've been able to throw some of my conceptions overboard with regards to what is the right behavior and what is important and where to find the balance, I think I am in a much better position to have balanced relationship as well, and to find appropriate behavior and living together with women especially. And it's taken my understanding of how relationship works to another level. That's for sure. I can say this. Yeah.
Well, we went a little bit off the main topic today, but in a way, it's at the end of the day, all this philosophizing about the economy, politics, and the future, and so on. You're having a daily life. You have to deal with your family, your environment, with your mother, whom I greatly respect and esteem, in the here and now. So that's what it's all about. How in practical life, and I'm wanting to change our conversation a little bit, if you come along with me, to look into the future. How does your balancing act, that dance, how does it show in your daily life, in your dealings with your boys, with your daughters, sorry, with your boy, with your daughters? A few words about that, David?
So about the future, and you want to focus me on me and my family, or to give a more view on the society?
I'm not yet ready to go to look at the society and two men drifting off again into their lofty, intellectual, utopic, visionary thinking. I did ask how in your daily life, because you said that you got to a point where you're managing better and better every day, the balancing of the old and the new paradigm of the worldview 1, worldview 2. How does that manifest itself? How does it show in your daily life when you have to bring your children to school and so on?
Yeah. Now, that's a good point, because maybe even with children, the results of change is very obvious and very easy to see. So in theory, when you think that these worldviews are equally important, there would be, so you would actually try to treat your children very equally, independent of their sex. Yeah? And this is a good theory. Yeah? It's good for beginners. But then it turns out, you offer your girls to play soccer, you offer your boy to play soccer, and it doesn't interest the girls. So it only interests the boy. Have you done something wrong? Not something that subconsciously you have taught your daughters that soccer is for boys only, although you always wanted to avoid this? Or is it just how things are, that the boys are really more interested in soccer? You never know. Yeah? But the intention, of course, is there to open up the opportunities to both boy and girl to do the same things. But also accept if it turns out that they do not have the same interests. So this always creates a little challenge, and we question ourselves, well, maybe unconsciously I have not really taken both into this, but this would be the goal. So I think, and maybe there's another good from daily life. We have to teach our children to defend themselves if injustice is done to them. And of course, then again, we have to teach the boys and the girls. But the way, of course, is not they perceive it the same way. And for instance, I actually have to teach this to my son in a different way than to my daughter. And this is interesting because I don't really have an explanation why their behavior is so different. When they need support, I have to teach them different things.
Interesting. One final question. Your firstborn daughter, whom I know, is not a soccer player. She's actually a boulder climber, and she has high ambitions. So do you push her? Do you say, I want you to come home with a gold medal from the Olympics?
This is a very good point. And this is actually just another example how to come up to deal with these challenges. So what I try to do is to support her as much as possible in really having as many opportunities to go for a sport and do the competition she likes. But I really also at the same time I tried to show her that climbing is not the only thing in life that counts. Yeah, and especially my wife, thanks to her, she shows her a lot about drawing, and it's interesting that she's very, very much enthusiastic about this climbing, but in the little time that's left we have for other things, she's very good at drawing too. And this is really interesting because this is such a good example that climbing is sports, is power, is energy, and this is much more on this World number one level, whereas drawing is artistic expression, and it's more on this World number two. And actually what we really try is to show her is both things. And I also encourage her when she's not happy, and she's quite hard on judging herself. So when she's not happy with the results she achieves at the competition, to teach her it's not about the results. It's about that you're doing what you like to do, and this is what counts first. It's of course great, we love and you like these good results if you get them, but if you do not get them, it's not a big deal, because in the end it's not really about results you achieve in climbing. It's about to learn how to lead a happy life.
Great, David. Thank you very much. I put myself in one of you because I want to tell my viewers, you could feel how passionate David was there for a moment. And there will be a biography in the description of this video where you can also see his website. And also, who knows, maybe we will have a little clip of his daughter climbing. But let's talk about the future, David. Where you know, you're saying things need to change. There is this dance. Science tells us that it's maybe a minute before high noon, that it's high time we change. But I look around me, not much is happening. The Dalai Lama is calling for immediate change. Everyone is calling for immediate change. But you know, now people are waiting for Corona to go away, and basically most of the people are saying so we can go back to how it used to be, and implicitly that means also driving the same cars, going to the same vacation, doing the same infernal sins to the globe as we all have done in the past. So give us a little bit of hope.
I'll do my best. With regards to Corona, it's a very good example because believe me, things when Corona is gone will never be the same they were before. And that's basically something we will have to accept. Consider Corona as being like an initiation. It has speed up processes that were undergoing anyway. So I think, for instance, that many shops that were open before Corona will not be open or from an economic point of view, bringing enough money after Corona again, because people have learned to shop in the internet. This has increased, and now even if Corona is over, why should people go so much shopping anymore? I don't think this is going to happen. And the same is true for working. Now Corona has shown us that we can all, not all, but many of us sit at home and do their work here. I don't think that people will give this up after Corona completely. So we have entered processes in Corona that will stay, and I think after Corona will not be before Corona. So, but this is not really the answer to your question. Yes, I think there will be a tendency after Corona to do it as it was before. This is human, this is normal. However, there is also on this point of resources, there has been a little change. Because when I look into climate politics, and maybe going back to the 1990s where this topic came up, there was 30 years of nothing happened, and emissions have increased and increased and increased. So a couple of years there was Greta Thunberg coming up, and there were first hints that this could be the part of a change in the system when the young generation stands up and say, we can no longer do this. And this is not so long ago, the European Union has started to really set up climate reduction, greenhouse gas reduction laws that now I'm very vorsichtig at the moment that this is really going to happen, because 30 years of politics where nothing happened, and now it seems a little change that this climate issue, which is then also an issue of resources and how we treat our planet, is going into a new direction. I'm optimistic in this is going to take place. Yeah? And we will see what the other changes will be. But after Corona, we will be in a new world, as Corona is a sort of an initiation for the whole world, and we do not really know how it's going to look like afterwards.
I think that's one of the challenges, and we humans tend, because the future is unknown, the new paradigm, the world view number 2 is undescribed yet, but we do know the old. And we tend, in chaos and in emergencies, we tend to hang on to the known, which has served us to great extent in the past, and turn towards the past modus operandi, rather than taking the adventure to go into something unknown. We are coming to an end. A few quick questions and answers, David. First question, we're coming to an end. I want to stop in a minute or two. Are you unhappy about it? Did you want to speak more about the worldview number 2?
I think we could go on, discuss it for hours. No, I'm quite happy with what we've done so far. And as I said, the topic is so big, could be continued anytime.
Okay, a few quick questions, quick answers, please. Tourism, how will tourism be in 20 years?
I don't see too much change in tourism. What I'm hoping for is that at some points they will increase the costs of flying, because it's way too cheap, and this is really there is no sustainability in this. But apart from this, I don't see too much trends in how tourism is going to change.
I see it changing radically, and I share with you that flying, particularly the cruises, also those huge ships, they must go, they must disappear. But that's a radical view. And another question, economically speaking, where's the economy going? I mean, right now the rich are getting richer. The stock exchange is going through the roof. Everybody has been screaming Corona will be all bankrupt within 6 months. But the results coming out saying, oh, we didn't do that badly in 2020, for example. So what are the major changes, one or two, in the next 5 to 10 years, David?
If we do nothing, this system works towards a disaster. And if we do something, we have to bring in the sustainability, and also what you mentioned, balancing out the differences in what people possess. And this is something, if we do not anything, we will end up in the old Rome, where you have a majority of poor population and just a few rich. This is not where we're wanting to go to, but without taking measures, this is where we're heading to.
Environmentally, we are at the tipping point, I believe. How big are the chances for humanity taking the right turn in a time span of 3 to 5 years, which most people say is the maximum that we need to make some real radical changes? What is your evaluation? Are we going to make it?
Yes, because I'm optimistic, but it takes a huge effort. And the answer is quite simple. It's renewable energy. And it's not been done enough in the last 2 decades. We have really to push this.
Good. Final question. How do you feel, David? How was this half an hour we spoke?
Absolutely fantastic. No, I love talking to you, and I'm very grateful that we have had this opportunity today. And yeah, many more opportunities to come. Who knows?
Yes, there will be a follow-up, no doubt about it. Thank you very much, David. I say goodbye to Vienna. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hold on a second. Bye, David. Dear viewers, I thank you very much for having watched, and I hope you will subscribe and watch us again in 3 weeks' time. See you.